One.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 25th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. I'm hearing a lot of feedback. I'm going to ask everyone to mute their microphones. Great. That's a great help. All right, so let's continue. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 25th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. My name is Catherine Halpern. I'm Chair of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. This meeting is being conducted by remote participation only, and in a moment I'll go into a few points regarding that. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. Also, I do need to ask if anyone is recording the meeting. It is all right to record the meeting, but you need to notify us. I'll give you a few seconds in case you are muted. Okay, thank you. So this meeting of the Chatham Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation only in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternative means of access of public access via Microsoft Teams or by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. That phone number again is 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID number is 907-579-042#. That's 907-579-042#. You can also join the meeting online, as I mentioned, using Microsoft Teams through the link in the agenda that's posted on the town website. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. And as I mentioned, we will be posting a recording of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. And also just to note that in accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. A few more procedural points regarding our remote participation. We will begin with a roll call of all planning board members. When you are recognized by the chair for citizens or non-board members speaking, would you kindly repeat your name and also the last 4 digits of your phone number before you speak? We just want to be able to clearly identify all speakers. And after an agenda has been discussed by the public body, in this case, the planning board, I will request if there are any citizens or non-board members who wish to make a comment or ask questions. When recognized by the chair, you may go ahead and speak. Again, we should have only one speaker at a time, and that is the person recognized by the chair. Also, I didn't mention earlier, and I'll just mention again, for the sake of the clarity of the transmission, if you are not speaking, would you kindly mute your microphone on your phone or your computer, and please disable the video on your computer. That's with the exception of planning board members, you should leave your videos on, but kindly mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Then all votes by the planning board will be taken by roll call vote. And at the end of the meeting, we will close the meeting with a verbal confirmation of adjournment and we'll note the time of adjournment. So before we do, so let's begin with the roll call of planning board members. Art Sprue, are you present?
Art Sprue, present.
Warren Chain, are you present?
Warren Chain, present.
Tom Gagan, are you present?
Tom Gagan, present.
Bob Wirtschafter, are you present?
Bob Wirtschafter, present.
Bob Dubus, are you present?
Bob Dubus, present.
Roger Griffin, are you present?
Roger Griffin, present.
And this is Catherine Halpern, and I am present. And then before we begin, are there any board members who need to recuse themselves from any matters on tonight's agenda?
Miss Catherine,
Yes.
this is Bob Dubus.
Yes,
I have a question.
yes,
I know on Gillis Lane, I know these people. I have worked for them before, but I have no monetary interest in this project yet. So just to let the board know.
yes. Okay, thank you. Good. So let's do the minutes first, and after the minutes, I will, with everyone's permission, bring the matter of 79 Forest Beach Road to the top of the agenda. So first, let's do the minutes for the September 27th meeting. Does anyone have any corrections, additions, amendments to the minutes? There being none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes for the September 27th meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Thank
Roger
you,
Griffin.
Rod. Thank you,
Bob-
Roger. May I have a second?
Bob Dubus, second.
Thank you, Bob. So let's do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wertheimer, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approves.
and this is Catherine Halper, and I also approve the minutes. So I want to bring the matter of 7940 Forest Beach Road, which is a continuation of the public hearing from September 27th to the top of the agenda. We have received a request from the applicant to continue this matter to November 8th. Thad, would you like to make any comments?
Sure. Thad Eldridge here. We had a productive on-site last Monday and we're getting revised plans in shortly. We certainly couldn't meet the deadline for revised plans, which was prior to the on-site. So we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you. We should take a vote to continue to November 8th. May I have a motion to continue the matter of 7940 Forest Beach Road to continue the public hearing to our November 8th meeting at the request of the applicant?
This is Warren Chain, so moved.
May I have a second to that motion?
Roger Griffin, second that motion?
Thank you. So let's do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wertheimer, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approves.
and this is Catherine Halper, and I also approve. Thank you very much, Thad. And now the next item on our agenda is an approval not required for 23 Woodcarver Knoll and 14 Pondview Lane. Do I have a presenter for this matter?
You do. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the owner of the property, Julie Moore, as trustee. You have the planning board staff comments, and as usual, Katie did a fine job of summarizing what is a fairly minor change from an ANR plan that you endorsed on July 26. Parcel A and Parcel B are non-buildable lots, will be combined with 14 Pondview Lane, the property at the top of that screen. Parcel C, and I nod in deference to Mr. Sprue, who suggested that we ought to label that parcel on the prior plan. Parcel C will be combined with the adjacent property at 23 Woodcarver Knoll. The sole change is a slight adjustment in the diagonal line dividing parcel B and or rather parcel A and parcel C. The result is that the property at 23 Woodcarver will become more conforming, even more conforming than it was on the prior ANAR. That's essentially it, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is an approval not required, so we would endorse it. May I ask the board, any board member have any question or comment for Mr. Litchfield? There being none, may I ask for a motion that we endorse this approval not required as submitted?
Bob,
Art Sprue, Go ahead, Bob.
All right, I was gonna say Bob Dumas, move to approve this.
Endorse. And do I have
Endorse.
do I have a second?
And Art Spru, I'll second that.
All right, let's do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dumas, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we endorse this A&R as submitted. Thank you, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you all.
We have another approval not required, and this is for 137 Kelly Lane. And again, do I have a presenter for this matter?
Hello, Thad Aldridge here from East Southeast.
Please go ahead, Thad.
So Mr. Nixon has purchased 137 Kelly Lane. It was originally composed of these lots 8 and 9 along Kelly Lane, and then the property in the rear. We're reconfiguring the lot lines so that it's 2 properties. The existing dwelling that will be made non-conforming will be, it is historic, or at least the southerly portion of it is a section to be removed. It's from 1975. So we don't expect too much. Mr. Nixon has great hopes of building his own home on Lot 8A. Both lots contain adequate frontage and area to comply with the zoning bylaw. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from the board for Thad regarding this approval not required?
Catherine, this is Art Spru.
Please go ahead, Art.
I'd just like to have a statement put on the plan. It's what we usually call for. Usually it's written underneath the signature block of the planning board. The above endorsement is not a determination of conformance with the zoning regulations. And other than that, I have no other comments.
Okay, great. Thank you, Art. Any other comments from planning board members or questions? So may I have a motion to endorse this approval not required with the addition as noted by Art Spru on the plans, which we usually include. May I have a motion to endorse this approval not required?
Art Spru, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And may I have a second to the motion?
Roger Griffin, I'll second that.
Thank
Motion.
you. Thank you. So let's do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dumas, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. Thank you very much.
Thank
Next
you.
item, you're welcome. Next item on the agenda is the matter of release of covenant statement of conditions, and this is regarding Gillis Road. And Mr. Litchfield, are you presenting for this matter?
I am,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chairman. Bill Litchfield.
Please go ahead.
Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the Gillis family, in this case more particularly Jack and Marilyn Mormon Gillis, who own Lot 3. I assume that you have the letter which I provided to the board some time ago, and I'll simply summarize the issue. The Gillis family has owned this property for just about a century. There's a land court plan of Gillis Road from 1936. Some of the houses on the road were built as long ago as 1924. Jack and Marilyn have been going forward with their plans to build a house on Lot 3, 75 Gillis Road. And in conjunction with that, I was doing the title, looking at the title, and while it's been in the Gillis family lo these many years, in looking at the title, I came across a statement of conditions. They had already applied for a building permit, which I understand was about to be issued. And I made I won't say the mistake, I did the right thing and asked the Department of Community Development if there was a release of the statement of conditions. It turns out there was not. it turns out that all 9 lots, several of which have houses built on them, since that statement of conditions, the statement of conditions has never been released. Curiously, again, as noted in Katie's staff report, while there is a reference to a covenant, no covenant was ever signed. It appears that none was drafted. So we are seeking today, well, in regard to the statement of conditions, as Katie's staff report indicates, some road improvements were done. The statement of conditions is almost 25 or 20 plus years old. It's kind of difficult to determine after 2 decades what exactly was done. Some of the work specifically was done because 2 lots, Lot 5 and Lot 6, required certain improvements to be done before building permits were issued, and building permits were indeed issued. So what we're seeking now is a release of this sort of nebulous statement of conditions. Jack and Marilyn are here, and they do want to speak to you, Madam Chairman, if that's acceptable, but I can tell you that the things that they propose to do in conjunction with the construction on Lot 3 are exactly what you would ordinarily provide. Fill or require rather, rough grade and fill the holes in the road with T-base before construction. Create a turnaround for construction vehicles on Lot 8, which they already have for nearly a century. Keep the road open and maintain it during construction, and then post-construction, smooth it, widen it, clear the roadside of trees, and ensure that the fire department is happy. From limited knowledge and limited general knowledge and knowledge of what I think is in the file, it appears that the statement of conditions may also have addressed that, or been intended to address that portion of Gillis Road, which is not shown on the land court plan and which leads from the town road, Mill Creek Road, up to Gillis Road itself, or the Gillis Road, which is at issue here. So we are seeking a release of the statement of conditions. There is no covenant to release. None was ever signed. And the Gillises, as they will advise you, have every intent of post-construction improving Gillis Road. Of course, it is and will remain a private way, but improving it so that they can get to their house and work with their neighbors to keep it open. So that's essentially what we're seeking. And if I could, Madam Chair, could the Gillises speak? Because I know they would like to do so.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and as well as Attorney Litchfield. I just wanted to reinforce that we have spoken with our contractor. He is prepared to fill the holes in the road from Mill Creek Road all the way to this point of construction. As Bill indicated, we will be clearing some of the Lot 8 so that construction vehicles can park off of the road, and we'll be maintaining the road during the construction. We have spoken to a road contractor, and the road contractor strongly advised us against doing anything prior to construction. And the reason why we had is because the entire family who lives on that road is very interested in improving the road, but we've all agreed that we wouldn't want to do anything until after construction. After construction, we fully intend to bring the road up to the conditions required, including a 12-foot wide tipped drain to properly drain so that with gravel and T-base, clear the sides of the roads for 2 feet on either side, clear a height of 12 feet, and include drainage swales where necessary. The idea being not only do we want ready access to it, but we want to ensure that the fire and ambulance equipment can get in and out very easily, which they have been already. Unfortunately, we've had to call the ambulance on a few occasions. So they are able to get in and out even now. So we're asking for this release primarily because, as you all know better than any of us, scheduling of building projects these days is enormously challenging. And we had fully expected this would be kind of a close and shut building approval because we met all of the building requirements as well as meeting the Board of Health and conservation requirements. If we have to delay this, then we run into the problem of losing the subcontractors and so forth that are set up and ready to go. So we're very much hoping that you will release this covenant and that we and the statement of conditions, and that we can continue with our construction. In fact, we're actually ready to start tomorrow. We're kind of taking a chance on you, but we're hoping to start tomorrow. But of course, we won't do anything until we get your approval.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Gillis. So I do want to give the board a chance to ask Mr. Litchfield or you any questions, go through any comments. I just want to, if I may, remind the board that this subdivision dates back to 1936. So it was put into place really before, certainly before there was any zoning in the town of Chatham and before we had formal subdivision rules and regulations. I'm not sure, but it may be even prior to the Massachusetts subdivision control law. Is that correct, Mr. Litchfield? But yes, when Katie and I discussed it this afternoon, but there was a law regarding the division of land, a general law. So this is something that pre-exists our current requirements. On the other hand, there is that wonderful little statement in this statement of conditions, point 2, that leaves some determination in the hands of the planning board at the time, which happens to be us. So, and that is the call, point 2, there shall be a covenant on lots 3, 7, 8, and 9, as shown on Land Court Plan 11741B. Prior to the release of any lots from the covenant, improvements shall be made to Gillis Road, including the portion between the Gillis property and Mill Creek Road, as required by the planning board at that time. The planning board may require bituminous concrete paving with drainage structures and repairs to the roadway. So that may be the issue that we are looking at. And I think going back to the staff report, just to sum up the possible votes and what's before us, we could approve the full release of the statement of conditions for lots 1 through 9. We could also alternatively vote to approve a release of the portion of the statements of conditions for lots 1 through 9, which would entail that we release lot number 3 so that construction could begin on the lot in question. There's also a possibility that we could vote to disapprove the full release of the statement of conditions, but of course we need to provide our reasons for disapproval. So that's just a summary. So let's go through, and Art, do you have questions for Mr. Litchfield or for Mr. and Mrs. Gillis?
This is Art Spur. Thank you, Catherine. I went out there and visited the site, and I'm concerned about the condition of the road. When I was out there, it was Monday, I think a week ago from today. I think it was the 18th. A rain event had occurred previous day. There was a dip in the road. There was flooding across the road. The road was muddy. It was not gravelly at all. My observation is it would be difficult to have an emergency vehicle get it in and out of there. I'm concerned about delaying and releasing a lot and not knowing when we're going to have the reconstruction of the road. Usually that's completely opposite of what we do. You construct the road, you put it into a condition, you either have a covenant or you have a bond, and then you do a lot release. So I think we're doing this in the wrong direction. Now I understand that there's reasons why you might want to reverse it, but I think the road needs to be passable, and in my observation, I didn't think it was passable. So as a minimum, that portion which is flooded and on the road has to be put into a state so that it is passable. Because there was no way that you could get to the rear properties if there was a continual rainstorm event through there on lots 5 and 6 and the others toward the rear there. So that's what I observed. That's, I think, a direction that I'm thinking right now. And I'm not quite sure about, a subdivision that was created back in the beginning, and now you have another document that says that we need to have a covenant, and that covenant wasn't put in place. Then let's put a covenant in place and get that set and done. I'm wondering why we're trying to waive everything rather than put things in place and do the work. That's where my comments are, Catherine.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. And do you have any more specifics about the road improvement that you would want to see?
Well, I think it would, to try to come halfway is to require at least a minimal work being done so that it's a passable during a flooded condition. And the other part of it, there has to be some sort of a bond someplace so that if the work is not done, then we can call in a bond and have the work performed associated with it. Because I don't know when the property owners are going to want to go back in there and put the full width of surface in there that is stated in the conditions that are dated 2001.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Warren Chain, questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is Warren Chain. I have sympathy with Art's comments, but I have a need to try and understand where this sits. And I think those are my concerns are both best addressed to Councilor Litchfield. The statement of conditions that clearly has not been complied with is in what status? Is it still an obligation? And if so, on whom?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I could respond to.
Yes, please
Um,
go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, the statement of conditions is sort of a curious document. The applicant was a family member, not Jack and Marilyn. They were not aware of the statement of conditions, and actually what it really applied to more specifically was lots 5 and 6. There was also, interestingly enough, a partial release of some of the funds that were paid to the town in conjunction with a building of a house further down Mill Creek Road, which was not part of the land court property shown on the plan that I provided you. So the statement of conditions, this particular statement of conditions from a legal perspective, is really questionable what impact it has, because there is no covenant. There never was one, and so there shall be, but there wasn't. Now, a covenant ordinarily says the lots can't be sold until certain things are done.
Right.
In this particular case, Jack and Marilyn own lots 3 and 8, but the other lots have been conveyed. And I think response to what you're really asking, and it sort of goes to Art's comments, the road was put into better condition 20 years ago. Emergency vehicles, as Jack pointed out, have unfortunately had the need to get in and out of there. The road is generally passable, and obviously the 4 or 5 houses which are beyond lot 3 have access on a daily basis. However, the Gillises have assured you that they will do what they propose to do. And if the board wants to release only lot 3, that would address the needs that the Gillises have, and it would also give the town some degree of authority for the future, which is what you presumably want. I'm not sure that a bond would be appropriate. The Gillises are undertaking construction, but I suppose the town would have the ability to decline to issue a certificate of occupancy if the road work weren't underway after the house is completed. It doesn't make a lot of sense to complete the road, clean the road up, and then have heavy construction vehicles traveling in and out for the construction of the house on Lot 3.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. Well, again, the statement of conditions that was issued in 2001 really talks about prior to issuing a certificate of occupancy, items A through F shall be completed. Now, that clearly may or may not have been done for houses 5 and 6 to the satisfaction, or lots 5 and 6, to the satisfaction of the planning board or building commissioner. But clearly, those conditions have not been met for the other lots. And, but I'm not clear as to whether there's an ongoing obligation that they be done prior to a CO being issued for Lot 3, for example. Another way to ask that question would be, given that the certificate, the statement of conditions was not fully complied with prior to their issuing COs for the houses that exist there, is it necessarily an obligation that the statement of conditions be released to build a house on Lot 3? No different than lots 5 and 6.
I can't answer that. A statement of conditions, because I don't think there's any great surprise. It's not unusual to obtain mortgage financing in construction. And that is how this issue arose. On behalf of the lending bank, I looked at the title, and ordinarily a covenant is always released before construction. A statement of conditions, frankly, doesn't always get done. And as you know, you are occasionally approached by attorneys who say, we have found a statement of conditions from 10 years ago or 20 years ago, as the case may be, and you have to issue them after the fact. It is certainly a red flag, we'll put it that way, in terms of the title. Now, this is land court title, which makes it more complex, and until and unless there is a release of Lot 3 or of the statement in its entirety, it will remain on title, and it does create a problem not only for the Gillis's contractor schedule, but also for any mortgage financing, because it raises a question. Banks, even in the post-war, banks are historically conservative, and they're going to ask questions about that. So it is important to the Gillises to have a release of Lot 3. Now, if I could follow further, the board at one point apparently had a $10,000 fund provided by Thomas Gillis. A portion of that was released when another lot 2, but not on the land court plan, was released. And because I believe Katie's staff report indicates that Skip Kendrick, who acted as your road agent decades ago, Skip, in fact, did go out and looked at lots 5 and 6, and at the time, in 2002, indicated that those conditions were met. Although, interestingly enough, lots 5 and 6, while they have certificates of occupancy, have never been released from the statement of conditions. Nothing has ever been done in regard to the statement of conditions.
Okay.
Well, the obligation was not on the current owners of lots 5 and 6, was it? It was on the applicant, probably a parent of the current applicant. Not sure. The current, whoever signed and agreed to the certificate or the statement of conditions that we're talking about. Right? The owners of lots 5 and 6 have no obligations under the statement of conditions, do they?
No, and in fact, arguably no one has, and that's one of the problems about this somewhat nebulous document. It doesn't specifically state obligations, certainly in the part of Jack and Marilyn, who aren't even a party to the presentation to you back in 2000 or 2001 apparently.
Well, I
So-
guess I don't need to apologize for my lack of clarity in terms of reading and
Not clear.
listening to comment. And let me suggest, is it an option to release the statement of conditions here? And to, as a condition for that, we impose a new statement of conditions on the applicant, which may be largely items A through F on the 2001 statement of conditions, that it would release, therefore, the obligations or conditions applicable to lots 5 and 6 and the other lots that are there, but impose the statement of conditions that are for lot 3 or other lots that are there, that the conditions be met prior to the issuance of a CO. Okay? Everybody seems to have violent agreement about what this ought to look like after a house is built on lot 3. So it's only a question of how we clean up the mess from the past and ensure that the road is improved currently, but also as was a condition of the 2001 statement of conditions, which is, 18 feet wide and a turnaround at the end, and the crushed stone that I saw that is on the part of Gillis, which has been improved, looks fine to me. I'm not a civil engineer and certainly not a lawyer, but is something like that make sense, since there seems to be agreement about what the outcome ought to be? Whether there's a bond, that's another question, separate.
If I could, Madam Chairman.
Yes, please go ahead.
I think the imposition of a new statement of conditions on Jack and Marilyn Mormon Gillis might make sense had the Gillises applied to you for a subdivision. Had they applied to you for anything but a release, it might make sense. I think a requirement of a bond would be more appropriate. In other words, I think it'd be sort of difficult to impose a statement of conditions on a subdivision created 80 years ago when the subdivision and the road already exists. A requirement of the posting of a bond prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy in exchange for a release of the statement of conditions, I think would probably be a more viable option.
Yes, but the statement of conditions was issued in 2001, all right, in advance of construction of some homes there. So it would be pretty much the same situation as now. It's prior to the construction of a home, another home, this time on lot 3. Again, I don't know the answer. It just seems there's violent agreement about what this ought to look like when it's all done. I think that house ought to be built, and I think the road ought to be improved. And obviously, the statement of conditions, if it's toothless, it doesn't mean anything, which may be up for discussion. That's one thing. If it is, then it ought perhaps could be replaced with a new one, which is not toothless. But clearly, I would be in need of having guidance from the appropriate attorneys, such as you, Counselor, as to how to make this happen. And it does seem to me that a bond is probably appropriate, just to make sure that we don't wake up 25 years from now and find out that, again, the road was not improved.
Well, if I could, again, according to Katie's staff report and according to what happened, based on what happened for the CO for 5 and 6 and the construction of the house on the former Eldridge property further down Mill Creek, the road was improved. I think that recognizing what you're looking for, which is some security over and above what Jack has said would be done, that I think a release of lot 3 coupled with a bond as a condition of the release of the statement of conditions might be a viable option.
All right, thank you, Counselor. No other comments?
Okay, great. Thank you, Warren. So Tom Gagan, questions for Mr. Litchfield or comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Tom Gagan. Bill, your statement of a release for Lot 3 with a bond speaks to a compromise of a situation which is getting sticky and it needs to be cleared up. So without trying to overlook the need for this board and the town to have some security, I would support a bond. I would also support that Arthur Sprue said that there were some issues with puddling. Um, I don't think it makes any sense at all to improve a road and have concrete trucks, which weigh 3,000 to 4,000 pounds per cubic yard, and other such devices driving down any kind of a road in this year. This time of year is better than not, but that doesn't make any sense in terms of construction. If the Gillises would be happy to allow us to take a look at the road in terms of puddling, so it's safe to pass, that's one condition. If they would be willing to have a release from this board for Lot 3, posting a bond which gives the assurity to the town that we have some control over that which we may and may not need control, but we need to be consistent in what this board does for all lots, no matter what the historical legal boondoggle has been. But I don't think this board, certainly this member of the board is not trying to interpret 80 years of issues. I've come across this several times in my business, and people with good intent, as the Gillises seem to be, are usually able to work this out with some covenants that protect the town. So I would be very much in support of covenants, particularly bonding of the road, maintaining the road to some degree of reasonable travel through the building of Lot 3, releasing of Lot 3 for building, but having the town have control over that until the CO is issued. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And Bob Wirtschafter, questions for Mr. Litchfield, comments?
Yeah, I don't really have any more questions. I'm leaning towards the bond suggestion. Whether we go further than that, I'm not really sure where I stand yet.
Okay, thank you. And Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus here. I'm kind of following along the lines of Tom Gagan, releasing Lot 3, having a bond till work is done. The only thing I disagree with is I would like to see the road temporarily where the ruts and the puddles are filled in and with gravel, and then maintained during the course of the construction. When the construction's all done, then I'd like to see the road improved when all the big gear gets out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And Roger Griffin?
Yeah, I think I agree with everyone before me. I think the bond would is probably the way to go. I think it would make us feel a lot more comfortable. And I think as far as the road, obviously, yeah, it's. I was out there. It was, you know, I don't know. I guess we probably, well, that's going to take care of itself. Anyone to do any construction there is going to probably have to be shored up a little bit because the puddling. We were there, and I guess it had rained a couple of days before that. It's yeah. It needs some. It's going to need some shoring up probably for them to even deal with the construction. They can see their point where they're not going to want to probably finish the road before that, but it's going to need some attention. But I think going the bond route is probably going to be the cleanest way.
Okay, great. Thank you, Roger.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Gagan.
Yes, I would like to add one thing. This
Sure.
road coming out onto a town road, during construction, there, particularly in a wet season, there's often tracking of mud and debris, but because of the weight of the vehicles, Bob Dubus can speak to this. I think would also be helpful if there could be an apron of material, which is material of a dimension, rock dimension, not the length of the road, but just an apron to help clean off the tires as they would exit this area. I don't think that's a very expensive thing to do, but it also lends to the fact that in my original suggestion was that whatever puddling is taking place now, as Mr. Dubus has pointed out, to be filled in with a gravel material, a compacting material, so that further erosion or degrading of the road does not continue during construction. So that would be another suggestion that I would make, that the board impose some form of basis to allow the trucks exiting, not to drag anything out onto the street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. This is Catherine. I just have a question. Actually, there's so many questions on this, but I'm wondering, Katie, do you have that aerial view that you could share your screen? I just have a question about lots 7, 8, and 9, because I understand those do not have structures on them. And we've all been talking about how it doesn't make sense to improve the road so that construction vehicles can have access to lot 3. But my question is about lots 7, 8, and 9. Will they in future have construction going on those lots? And would we have the same issue about not improving the road prior to construction on those lots? Because I think what we're saying here is we want the road improved, if not prior to any construction on lot 3. Certainly we're considering the bond that would require the road to be improved as soon as construction on lot 3 is done. But what about future construction on lots 7, 8, and 9 would be my question. And Mr. Litchfield or the Gillises, if you feel free to respond.
Thank you. I don't want to steal Katie's thunder, but I can tell you factually that Jack and Marilyn own Lot 8, and that is the area on which they will do some partial clearing to allow construction vehicles to park there. So Lot 8 would remain subject to the statement of conditions. I can't speak to Lot 7 and 9.
Well, thank you for that question. That's a big question.
Yes.
It's taken us 25 years to save up and put together enough to build on Lot 3. We own Lot 8. We have no intention of building now, but your question is good. Maybe my children hopefully will build on Lot 8. And my cousins may be building, my cousin is a school teacher and she may build in Chatham, and she may build on Lot 9. So the question is a good one. And I think what we really want to stress is 3 things. One, even before this thing surfaced, our contractor had every intention of filling in the road prior to bringing his equipment in. It's sort of a bottom line that he needs to do. Secondly, the puddle that everybody is talking about has plagued us since my grandfather bought the property in 1925. So it is an issue that we're all aware of. However, it doesn't really inhibit egress to the back lots. We have my 3 cousins live there and they drive in and out every day, and we drive in and out every day. So I can assure you that there's no problems for them coming in and out. However, we will be filling that with T-base because it is right in front of lot 3 that you have circled there on the lot. So it's like it has to be done before we can bring in the heavy equipment. So that part of it is part of our plan no matter what. Even if this wasn't discovered or this didn't come forward, we have to do that.
So I might just add that there are no immediate plans to construct anything on the lots
7, 8,
7, 8, and 9. And it is, as we said in the opening statement, our full intention to improve the road as soon as the construction is done. We have already consulted with our family members and put together a plan to improve the road. So that will be done. And then who knows what's going to happen with future construction and whether additional improvements may have to happen after those projects are done. But we plan to improve the road as soon as our construction is done.
And I think as a final thing, what we're really asking you is for, I don't know if it's a special favor or whatever, but we're really in a bind because we didn't expect this to happen. If we hadn't gone to the bank to get a construction loan, this wouldn't have surfaced. And we're kind of in a really big bind now, so that if we don't start this thing right away, we're going to be in big trouble in terms of getting it closed in time for winter. And it may have to be postponed altogether because, as you know, subcontractors are very dear. I can assure you, we've been in this town since 1925. I grew up in this town, went to Chatham High with Bill, and we're not going anywhere. And we haven't gone anywhere, as you can see, by the ownership of these lots. So this isn't a scam. We're not trying to pull a fast one, but we are in a very difficult situation. So we're appealing to the board to approve or release us at least lot 3, and we're fine with a bond because we plan to do the job anyway.
Right. I think the key is it's holding up the building permit. And so if we could only get the release of lot 3 to move forward with the building permit so that we can move forward with the construction, then we are very, very happy to do all of the things that you all have discussed. And we're fine with a bond to make sure that the town has some leverage to make sure that we do it.
Okay, thank you. This is Catherine. So I'll just make a couple of comments. I mean, certainly we're all aware this is just a kind of a roundabout situation where the statement of conditions says there shall be a covenant for lots 3, 7, 8, and 9. And prior to the release of any lots from this covenant, improvements shall be made to Gillis Road as required by the planning board at that time, which is us. But there is no covenant. So we can't release the lots from the covenant. We would release the statement of conditions. What's being put before us, I just want to mention that I agree with Arthur that usually the road is improved first, although sometimes there are considerations for the need for the passage of construction vehicles. And I know there've been cases where we haven't completed the road prior, or the applicant or the subdivision property owner has not completed the road improvements prior to creating the lots, just to allow for the passage of construction vehicles. But it is the case that we usually require that the road be done first and then the houses. In this case, what is being proposed now is, in lieu of releasing lots 7, 8, 9 from a covenant that doesn't exist, and in lieu of releasing the entire statement of conditions, that we would release lot 3 from the statement of conditions, but impose a bond with conditions with certain conditions to require road improvements after the construction of the dwelling on lot 3. That's my understanding about what the board is considering, and I'll ask for any comments of board members regarding that summary.
Catherine, this is Art Sprue.
Yes, go ahead.
I think the way Bob Dubus articulated it is what my preference is that some stabilization gets done before the house construction starts. And that's only because I was out there, I saw the conditioned road, and I'm not looking for it to be up to the standard of the completed portion, but it put it into a safe condition for emergency vehicles or some basic construction vehicles that are going to come in and out of there. So I think Bob's statement is the one that I support associated with this.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Yes, and I think that's consistent with some things that we've done in the past. And it certainly makes sense. So I have a question for Katie or possibly for Mr. Litchfield, but let me ask Katie first. How do we structure this? Are we releasing lot 3 from the statement of conditions, but yet we're going to be imposing some particular conditions that need to be fulfilled even prior to construction? So are we, in a sense, creating a new statement of conditions plus a bond for lot 3? And I'm just asking Katie for clarification.
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. As I've been listening to all of the board members, I've been trying to formulate the appropriate way for this to be done. And I would like to also hear from Attorney Litchfield, but I do think that it would be a release of lot 3 from the statement of conditions with the condition that a bond be put in place, or that some stabilization prior to construction for emergency and construction vehicles be done to the roadway. A bond in a yet to be determined amount be put up for the future construction, and that we can release lot 3 only from the statement of conditions. And that release of lot 3 would then be recorded and shown, recorded at the registry, and shown that the Gillises would be free of that encumbrance, so that they could seek their funding and their mortgage. So I think if Attorney Litchfield agrees with that, it's again not so cut and dry as what we're used to doing, but I think that that may be the way to go.
Mr. Litchfield, do you have comments?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Katie. I think that would be the appropriate course, a release of lot 3. And we could record that forthwith at the registry and go forward with the construction loan. I have 2 questions that may be in Mr. Dubus's wheelhouse. Not that he would be able to do it necessarily, but the first one is, how quickly could the interim required work be done? Is that a 6-hour job or a 1-day job? That's number 1. And number 2, because the Gillises would have to come up with it one way or the other, what would be the approximate amount of an appropriate bond?
Mr. Dubus.
I'm hearing you, Bill. You're putting me on the spot, huh? Thank you.
Doing my best. Jack said I went to high school with him, but he's older than both of us.
Jack won all the science experiments in the school when he was there. He wouldn't let anybody else win. When he left, I finally got to win. So, Jack, I got you now. No. Actually, it's probably a 1-day job to bring in some T-base, bring a vibratory roller in there, roll it down so it's compacted, retouch up where the water can go, and put some gravel out in the front by the street. I would recommend 1.5 inch bluestone, and only blue because it won't roll, where the native stone will roll, because I know it's on a hill. And anywhere between $3,000 and $4,000 would be a respectable bond. My gut feeling is it might be a little more after construction. It depends on how many trees need to come out. But that would, between 3 and 4 is a good rough estimate to get the road regraded and do a pretty good job on it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dubus. So good. So that, this is Catherine. This just seems to be a workable solution. Yes, is that Warren?
Yes, it is, Madam Chairman.
Please go ahead.
Not to complicate things, but does it make sense to consider releasing lots, I think it's 4, 5, and 6, from the statement of conditions, just for good order's sake, since it seems to be irrelevant for them? And the second question would be, the statement of conditions does make reference for constructing a turnaround at the end, which would be at the end of lot 6 on an easement. Do you know if there is such an easement? And if not, is that something that somehow needs to be wrapped into a general understanding of what's going to happen here to complete Gillis Road?
No, I understand that turnaround has been done. Is that correct, Katie?
Yes, Madam Chair. When I was out there, it did appear that based on the plans in the file that the turnaround had been created. It's within the lot, within lot 6, but when I went out there, that there was a turnaround area there. And again, as I had mentioned in my staff report, those items per Skip Kendrick, the road agent back in 2002, had been completed. So if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
I think really what it comes down to is condition number 1 that encompassed 1 and then A through F. My understanding and from my read of the file has all been completed. Everything that was supposed to be done under that portion technically had been done. The drainage had been put into place. But again, it's really really number 2 of the statement of conditions that we're dealing with now. Because again, from my read of the file, Mr. Kendrick had indicated that all of that other work had been done back in 2002.
Thank you.
So this is Catherine. So Katie and Attorney Litchfield, we could, just for the sake of cleaning this up, could we add that, add a statement that all the work as required in point 1 on the statement of conditions from 2001 has been completed and lots 5 and 6 are therefore released. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Litchfield.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's
And
okay.
Mr. Shane asked the question too, and it would make sense, but for one unusual aspect.
Yes.
Recording of a release of a lot has a particular filing fee. The same filing fee at the Registry of Deeds applies to a complete release of all Cesar to their neighbors. We're only talking a few $100s, but that is the only reason I wouldn't necessarily encourage that course at this point.
All right. All right. So let's go back to the consideration of releasing lot 3, and with the stipulation that some stabilization of the roadway be done prior to construction, and that a bond in the amount of $4,000 be required for the improvement of the roadway post-construction on lot 3. That's just a very, very skeletal summary of the points from Katie, but that's what we're considering. Any discussion from the board?
Art Sprue, that sounds like a good motion for me to make. I'm fine with that, Catherine.
Good, all right. So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Roger Griffin, I'll second that.
All right, so let's do our roll call vote. Art Sprue.
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan.
Tom Gagan, approve with conditions stated.
State with the conditions as stated, or did you want to amend it?
I do not want to amend it. I just want to make sure that we're approving something that has conditions to it.
Okay, great, thank you. Bob Wirtschafter.
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin.
Roger Griffin, approve.
And this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield.
Yeah,
thank
thank you,
you,
Bill.
Mr. and Mrs. Gillis.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and consideration in an unusual circumstance, and we also appreciate the inadvertent hosting of the Chatham High School Alumni Association. So, thank you.
I thank all of my alumni friends, and but I just want one quick clarification. Does this mean we get the building permit tomorrow?
I'm going to have to refer that question to Katie.
We can certainly check with the building commissioner. We would probably need to see at least evidence that if you would want to submit the bond, if you're doing a cash bond, I think that would be easy enough to do. But if you were doing a letter of credit, that may take a little bit more time. But if the board is comfortable moving forward, we can certainly work to get the building permit issued as soon as possible.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chairman, could I ask one other
Yes,
question for
yes, Warren.
Bill
Yes.
Leaves? We have not released anything on lot 7, 8, 9 with respect to the statement of conditions. Does that situation therefore exist that to the extent a family member wishes to build a house on lot 7, that they're going to have exactly the same issue and we'll be back doing this all over again?
From my perspective, Madam Chairman, I think Mr. Shane asked me that question.
Yes.
Not patting myself on the back, but it depends on how much attention anyone is paying to the title. Very frankly, a building permit was almost issued for this lot without my having raised the question. I think, however, now there is significant and sufficient impetus for the road to be completed and for someone to come back to you for a complete release of the statement of conditions in the future.
All right, then I'm very much in favor of what I've already approved.
Okay. Thank you, Warren. All right, thank you. This is Catherine. We're going back now to our agenda. We have the next item on the agenda. This is a site plan pre-application conference. So again, this is not a formal site plan review, but a site plan pre-application conference. And the first item is 859 Main Street. And this is for a proposed change of use from a gas station and convenience store to a restaurant with a 2-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor. And do I have someone presenting for this matter?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Bill Riley.
Hi, Bill. Go ahead.
Thank you. Dave Clark has designed the proposed site plan. The McKinty family has purchased the property because they thought it needed some fixing up. And so they've had discussions with various people interested in it, and they wanted to run the ideas past the planning board and get some feedback. So I'd ask Dave to do the presentation and by your rules, and then we'll talk about it.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark. Dave, I think you're muted, David.
Yes, I was. Thank you.
All right.
So again, David Clark on behalf of the applicants. So as you all know, this is the Old Cumberland Farms property. Our site survey shows that the existing conditions, that the lot is pretty much almost 100% covered with either asphalt or buildings. So the proposal is to get it more in line with current zoning. So we're reducing a lot of the site coverage by redesigning the layout of the parking, while still having traffic flow through the property and having adequate parking for the intended use. So at this point, we're proposing a 100-seat restaurant. The applicant has no tenant in mind at this point, but the idea is to get a site plan that's approved by the planning board, so then the property could then be offered for lease with some definite parameters. Right now, it's kind of up in the air as to what can go in there, even if it is a restaurant, or how many seats and et cetera. So this is our our preliminary markup of what's proposed, 100-seat restaurant, and our parking calculation shows what's required under the bylaw. We still have traffic flow through the property. We are providing an alley, so to speak, to the back of the building for service for the restaurant. There's some existing chillers back there for the old refrigeration system. We'll still probably have some type of refrigeration back there. Obviously, if it's converted to a restaurant, we'll still need some, but probably not as many as shown there. And that will leave us room for a dumpster or refuse area. Property is, as you know, is currently served by 2 entrances on Main Street and also a third mutual entrance to the CVS property to the south. A lot of the pavement in front of the building is being removed, and we're providing a grass area right in front of the building to break up some of the asphalt there, and also creating a number of islands where no islands exist now. So we tried to get the site coverage down. That's it in a nutshell. Entertain some questions.
Great. Thank you. This is Catherine. So before we get started, I just wanted to, I'm looking at the plans. So those square areas that you've squared off right in front of the building, the intention is that would be grass or landscaping, something.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, surrounded by a walkway.
Yep.
All right. So my question would be, there's also that small area of existing landscaping that's right next to the street, right in front of the building. Could that also be widened in the direction so that you'd have even more landscaping? Maybe, so that would be my suggestion or my question.
Well,
But
then we would lose the landscaping in front of the building.
Okay, great.
So we need so much maneuvering area behind each parking space. So we're at the
Right.
minimum now.
Right.
So if we were to increase the island out on 28, then we would have to decrease the landscaping in front of the building. And we would probably lose maybe 3 parking spaces in doing that.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was my question. So let's go through the board members, see if you have questions, comments for David. And let's bear in mind, again, this is a pre-application conference, and we just want to offer information about what we want to see at the formal site plan application, and bear in mind our site plan review criteria. So Art Sprue, comments and questions or things you'd like to see at the formal?
Sure. An initial question, the green space area in the front, is there any possibility that could be looked at as outdoor dining space? I mean, we've seen a lot of that occur in other establishments, and I'm interested in understanding that aspect of it, because I think that would call for certain protections if you were going to consider that.
I don't think we've thought about that, but we were most likely considering a standing 8-inch curb along that whole stretch. So I don't know what more would be required, but that's something we will consider.
Okay, so if you do look at that, I think we would want to visit some protections of the public that are going to be there with vehicles only a few feet away. A couple of the other things that I picked up on that, some of them are obvious, some aren't. You're looking at 100 seats. I'd like to see whenever you come forward with a more definitive application, the building footprint on the inside, so we verify that, we are talking about 100 seats. Now, if you can't fit 100 seats in, you only can fit 80 in, then that means the parking doesn't need to be what you have it there. So I just want verification from the standpoint of not your final construction plans, but that you are, you do have sufficient square footage inside for 100 seats. And then we can verify the number of parking spaces. I think in our criteria, since this is a very tight location, a very busy location, I think our criteria number 1 and 2 for adequate and arrangements of vehicular traffic access and, pedestrian access, traffic management, we're going to need an analysis at this location because of the circumstances of what we're seeing that's happening there. We got 3 points of means of egress. There is a possibility we may have to do some restrictions on one to prevent a free flow of traffic. So we would need to understand a little bit more about that based on the traffic that's in Main Street. The other things that I see is setbacks for your parking dimensions. I think the parking setbacks for zoning are going to be I think 20 feet and 15 feet. So obviously you are closer than that. So if you're proposing to go to zoning to get a permit associated with that, dimensions of where the setbacks are from the property lines would help clarify some of that information for those decision points. If you have loading or unloading of goods in that, I don't know if that's going to be done at the rear there where you showed the chillers and that are. There's no access from the back, but perhaps you are going to be proposing something there for that. So I want to understand that a little bit. If you are going to be putting, dumpster, refuge in, of course, some sort of screening fencing, stockade fencing around it is what I would be looking for. Of course, stormwater calculations associated with this. Like to see that the downspouts from the building go into dry wells, and that could be separated out from that. There is, you're proposing to have more green space than what's there now. That's great. I commend you for that. I think it's important that you define what those areas are with whatever landscaping you're proposing to do for that. Yeah, the other thing is you mentioned that there's a lot of pavement on here, and if there appears like you're going to be doing some removals of things and you're adding things, it's sort of hard to understand what demolition are you going to do so that you can build what you're showing there. So I think it would be helpful for the board to understand that you're going to be removing this and you're going to be adding this. The plan you have here gives us somewhat of a picture of what you're going to be proposing to do, but I'm not quite sure what you are going to remove. Are you going to have a sidewalk adjacent to the building and then one that's up next to the cars that are parked there? Or do you no longer need that sidewalk, which is immediately in front of the building, because there will only need to be one access going in and it doesn't need access across the front? Again, just clarifications of what you are going to do and what you would propose to remove. With a tight site like this, I think when you're talking about winter conditions and snow removal, where would you be stockpiling that snow so that you would clear the site sufficiently? So if you designate locations of where that would be helpful. Lighting. There's existing lighting on the building. Those are wall pack type lightings. Those are not type of lightings that we look for as a board. So the building lighting would have to be modified. There's lighting that was at one time out there, at least 4 or 5 light poles that are there. Certainly those would have to be replaced with an appropriate type of lighting with a cutoff design light fixture. So we need to understand what type of fixtures you're going to be proposing on that. And the site is very flat. So some sort of a grading plan at least identifies, because I'm not sure contours alone can do it, that designates how the stormwater is going to flow to whatever types of structures, stormwater structures you're going to propose on the site. So those are some highlights of what I'd be looking for on the final definitive plan. Obviously, I don't need any feedback or statements at this point, but those are probably the important things I think the applicant should be considering for the final site design submission. That's all I have, Catherine.
Great, thank you, Arthur. So Warren,
This
what would
is
you
Warren.
like? What would you like to see in the
With
formal?
my comments, but I had a couple. There is an easement listed as easement area A, which has a stockade fence all the way around it. What is that used for? Is it going to be part of a site plan? In other words, if you make in a formal presentation, there ought to be some indication as to what that area is or what its use is. Right now, it's just stockade fence all around with nothing in it.
Well, actually, if may I speak to that directly, that is an access easement for the CVS drive-through. So that is pavement that serves as access on the budding property.
Well, then maybe I'm mischaracterizing what I saw on site, because what I saw was not paved, and it has a fence all the way around it, so it certainly couldn't be access to CVS.
Then that's not the hatch area that's shown on the plan.
Okay, then I stand corrected. All right, very good. In addition to the light poles that are there, which would not be in accordance with what we now are looking for, there's also the derelict, or not derelict, let's call it the post for the Goodspeed Gulf Station is still out on Route 28. Presumably that would come down, so I expect to see that not on the formal site plan, or at least indicating it would be removed, or replaced with signage. And at least the location of the signage, which obviously have to be approved by other boards, but the nature and location of that signage, I would think, would be something that I would hope could.
Warren, you've somehow gone on mute or got disconnected. This is Catherine.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
No.
we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Not sure what you did not hear then, but at least where the signage might be and what kind of signage you might be proposing. Outside dining was mentioned and I'd say I would be interested when there is a formal proposal as to have some considered judgment on that by the applicant. The obvious place would be out in the green space created in the front of the building. That would be, I think, desirable from a customer's point of view. I certainly would not be opposed to that at all. But if it is in fact envisioned, then the question would be, are those additional seats on top of the 100? And if so, then you would have an issue with the parking spaces. Or if you have fewer inside with outside parking allocated to the outside dining. Just give thought to that such that the proposal would at least make it clear what your thoughts are. With respect to the apartment on the second floor that's being proposed, I'd like to see on the formal proposal site plan the access to that apartment. Would it be internal to the building? Would it be external? And if so, where would that access point likely be? And then related to that, you might expect there to be one or even two dedicated parking spaces for that apartment. And if so, that would affect the parking calculation and the number of spaces that are currently shown. If it's 2 spaces for the apartment, obviously, then you're down to 30 that are available for the restaurant. But at any rate, one way or the other on the proposal, it could be addressed as to what your thoughts are. I have no other comments, but I do think that this is a great opportunity, by the way, to break up the asphalt that is there. It may even be helpful to the applicant to take a look at our draft zoning bylaws for the West Chatham Neighborhood Center with the idea of getting a sense of some of the concepts that are being thought about with respect to form-based zoning, with respect to how you can break up the appearance of this as being just a big block building sitting on the street. No particular proposals to make at this point, but at least the idea of landscaping and in addition to what's already been proposed here for the grass strips out front, I think is all very desirable. But that would be all. Those are all my comments.
Thank you, Warren. Tom Gagan.
Tom Gagan, thank you, Madam Chair. David, I have just 2 questions pertaining to the traffic flow. I remember from previous comments when this building came in front of the board some time ago. What is the legal status of that hashed area that leads from 859 and goes into the parking area for CVS and Chatham Market? Is that owned or held by 859, or is that held in deed easement by the market CVS?
Mr. Gagan, this is Bill Riley, and I reviewed those easements. They're cross easements. The owner of the Cumberland Farms property granted the CVS property, which is the Quincy Trust, the right to have access through their property, and they've granted a cross easement that enabled what was then Cumberland Farms permission to go from their property onto the CVS property. And as a part of that, as David indicated, the triangular cross-hatched area was granted so that they would have adequate access through the CVS drive-through. But in my conversation with Mr. Quincy, the trustee, he's indicated that he's very flexible, and if that became an issue.
Mr. Riley, you're cutting out. Have you muted yourself by accident?
Unfortunately, yeah, I did mute myself. Anyway, I apologize for that. Anyway, so there's some flexibility as to whether that easement remains or not.
Thank you, Bill. I have that as a question as to whether that could be eliminated. It doesn't seem to be used, at least in my observation. I don't think that it would be incumbent upon either the owners of 859 or the property owners of CVS to eliminate that. But the traffic flow in and out of this rather tight spot, I think would be best if the board could see that that's done as safely as possible. So this board member would ask if that could be dissolved, that easement be dissolved. And secondly, a possibility of eliminating the further opening onto 28 on the eastern end of the property so that there'd be literally one way in and one way out further back from that, I don't know what you want to call it, but 5 roads coming together and all of what the town has tried to go through that over the years to make it safer. Again, a recommendation to look into whether that would impede in any way the operation of the business at 859. But if that could be looked into in terms of what would be more safe for that area, might make some sense also.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
would, yeah, you're welcome. I'll let we'll talk with the Quincy's about eliminating the easement access between the properties. It doesn't really serve anybody any purpose, except for people who see a red light coming and cut through this property to get to the CVS without going through the red light. So
Right.
I think probably best for both properties just to close it off, and we'll certainly meet with the McKinties and talk about the wisdom or lack thereof of eliminating. I'd rely on David for this, but it seems to me if you shut off the eastern access, you'd have to widen the western access. But I defer to David on that.
But the issue of possibly eliminating that easement might benefit the owners of 859 to create either green space, outside seating space, or additional parking. There may be a nice trade-off there. And
you're absolutely correct. Yep.
And in eliminating the eastern current access to 28, and having to widen the western access certainly seems to be plausible, but it certainly is going to give more control over the distance, the sight distance from the traffic light and that hub of all those roads coming together. That's my only reason for suggesting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Chairman?
Yes, is that Warren?
Yes, it is. This
Please
is
go
Warren.
ahead.
I agree with all of those comments about that easement and the pass-through, but I'd add another factor to consider, and that is, as we've discussed in talking about West Chatham neighborhood center zoning, there are benefits to having access between sites that don't require that an automobile get out onto the main highway. Clearly, a restaurant is likely to have clientele and parking needs that are not concurrent with the parking needs of Market Square. And it may well be a factor to consider that you could, again, share the parking space between the restaurant and Market Square to the extent that that was necessary, and not require that automobiles get back out onto 28 just to get over to park at Market Square. Just another factor to consider, that's all.
Okay, thank you. This is Catherine. I just wanted to make a couple of comments because Arthur, Warren, and Tom have all brought up this issue of traffic flow on this site. So if I could just suggest in a general way that the applicant, along with the designer, with David, that you just carefully evaluate the traffic flow for both vehicles and pedestrians and come up with a solution that you feel is optimal in terms of safety and in terms of the needs of the business. I just wanted to comment that what I see going on there now, but of course it is a vacant building, is there's a lot of people who enter that area from the westernmost entry and just drive across the whole property to drive over to CVS or to Chatham Village Market. And that's the kind of traffic flow that if it continued, when you are now occupying the property with the residents above and a restaurant, that you want to discourage that type of flow, that type of cross traffic, because it will create safety issues. However, if you're going to close off, and Tom, I think you were suggesting closing off the western entrance, you would probably need to allow for some two-way traffic in the lane that's directly in front of the building, because it's conceivable that someone would enter on the eastern side all the parking is full on the eastern side, so they need to go over to the western side of the building to find parking, but there may be somebody, moving their car out from the western side who wants to exit again onto Route 28. So it's a similar issue that we faced with the parking lot at Chippehoy or at Chappahoy Plaza. So I'm just suggesting that the parking circulation, the vehicular circulation, the parking and the pedestrian circulation, that you just evaluate that carefully and come up with a plan that you feel serves the need of the business and also protects the safety of everyone. And then we'll take a look. I think all of the points that have come up from Tom and Arthur and Warren are really good suggestions, but just evaluate it carefully.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Gagan.
Yes, just to make sure that I have the right orientation, Rose.
Yeah.
If I look at the north pointing arrow, the entrance that I was talking about perhaps being terminated would be to the east and south.
Oh, to the east. Oh, okay, great.
So the entrance to the west was suggested that maybe if the southeasternmost entrance was to be eliminated or agreed to be eliminated, that the applicant would want to enlarge by some increment the northwestern section to accommodate that flow. And your point of people taking the closest route from A to B to get to CVS across that is probably enhanced by the fact there's no one there now.
Right.
But if that easement through the work of Bill Riley could be negotiated out of existence, that might really help the situation for all of us.
All right. One thing, and again, then just we need to look at the lane that's right with changes such as that, or even if the easement is kept in place, we need to consider the lane right in front of the building as somehow accommodating two-way traffic. That's the one issue that I'm seeing. Anyway, so let's go on to Bob Bortschafter. Do you have things that you'd like to see on the formal site plan, or any questions or comments?
Sure. Most of my concerns were in the traffic flow, and
Yeah.
The closing of that easement would be a positive step in that direction. I would suggest that footpaths between the properties would be an enhancement for sharing of parking spaces, and perhaps we can, if it's only open at night, then perhaps there is less need for parking in the actual property itself. I also think that you need to accommodate food pickups as opposed to other kinds of parking, and that may mean that you could put instead of, I guess I would say, horizontal parking, you could have parallel parking in front of the property. Maybe that would allow two-way traffic in front where you were suggesting, Catherine.
Right.
And then another option would be to move some of this open space to the east side, and because you're going to be picking up parking space to the very far of the east side. So I think there's some real opportunities here, but I'm going to go back to Arthur's original statement that whatever you do, we're going to need some quality testimony or whatever on the traffic pattern, not only within this space, but accessing into the space from both directions, and and the flow within the space, including that truck that has to get to the dumpster and a few other things. But I think most of this has already been mentioned. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Bob. And we're saying pickup, do you mean like takeout food?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With restaurants existing more
Yes.
and more on 5-minute pickups or waiting in line, and we spend a lot of time trying to, downtown, trying to make it so that the backups didn't extend into, access areas and things like that. So I think it is important that there be some consideration of pickup if they're going to have pickup.
Right.
So
Okay.
it really depends on.
Bob, I think you muted yourself.
Yeah, it really depends a little bit on the hours of the restaurants and the type of restaurants. But if they're looking for a site plan on an unknown restaurant, then I guess I don't know how we consider those components if it's an unknown restaurant.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Bob. Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus. I, way back when that was Ben Goodspeed's gas station, they made that easement so that people filling up with gas could get to the A&P store. And without going through the lights, the 5 corners there. But obviously the Cumberland Farms kept it because that helped them also. But I don't see very many people, unless they're trying to beat the light, go through there. And I think it would be a necessary evil to get rid of that piece right there. I agree with either figuring out the 2 entrances that are there or eliminating the eastern one and widening the western one. But I don't at this time, there's a big talk about doing something to the intersection there. And I know there's been talk for 20 years there, but I understand that it might be coming to fruition within the next 5 years. So that would be something to take into consideration if there is some kind of plan to look at that and go accordingly. I think that the green space in the front's a good idea. I like that. But I do believe that eliminating that easement now, I don't believe it's used that much. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And Roger Griffin.
Yeah, I have a few questions. We've covered a lot, so I can't see the redundant. I was kind of curious on a couple of things we talked about. It says apartments. It's total 3 bedrooms. Are we looking at, is that maybe a 2 and a 1, or are they looking at maybe 3 single apartments? I'm just curious.
Just at this point, it's just 1 apartment.
So it's 1 3. Okay, when it says total 3, so it's 1 3-bedroom apartment. Okay. Just now we talk with we see the site plan, and Bob Watchus had mentioned that sometimes even having a better idea of where it's going. I mean, do we have an idea of what type of restaurant we're looking? I mean, is it going to be maybe more of a dinner house restaurant than a fast food restaurant, or is that even been considered yet?
None of that's been considered yet.
Okay.
Well, in the first place, fast food restaurants of the type of McDonald's or any of those are not permitted in the town. So it's a sit down.
Okay, so it could be, normal sit down restaurants. Okay, we're talking roughly like 100 feet. So in the site plan, we would have an idea of what the layout would be inside, more or less?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. We will certainly provide a generic floor plan showing how we could physically fit 100 seats in there.
Okay.
But it won't be, obviously, we're looking for a tenant, and the tenant's going to want to finish the interior space to their liking.
Right. Are we looking?
For just for information purposes, the applicant is in the process of contacting a restaurant designer to help with the creation of that floor plan.
Being in the business, that's gonna work well for them. Just look at some of the questions. I want to be redundant, and I think we pretty much There was one other thing I think it was, no, I guess the other thing is, are we looking at this being hopefully a year-round restaurant? Is it gonna be seasonal? Or again, do we not know that yet?
Well, this is Bill Riley. I mean, um, a restaurant typically needs a liquor license in this day and age, and and there are no year-round licenses available. The number of seasonal licenses is actually unlimited.
Okay.
And seasonal licenses typically end in November, although they can ask for an extension and they can go from to January 15th. And so the restaurant, and I think most places do that now. I know Pate's has done it for years. So they'd be closed from January 15th to April 1st. And
Okay.
nobody's here then anyway, so who cares?
Right. Okay, that's all the questions I have, and it looks like it'd be good to see how it goes. It's great. Thank you.
I
Thank
remember
you.
when the Squire was seasonal.
Yeah, I know. So do I.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Madam Chair,
Who's
this
speaking?
is Art Sprue.
Oh, hi, Arthur. Go ahead.
I just want to do a follow-up on this easement area B.
All right.
Not to be in opposition to our board members, but if you take a look at what we're doing in the West Chatham Neighborhood Center and trying to mimic some things that are happening downtown, a big part of a success in something like this that would mitigate some traffic-related issues is linked areas like this. That easement area B, in my opinion, would provide relief on that. You might not see it today because there's nothing there and people are using it as a cut through. But once you have a developed property at 859 and it's a restaurant and you have businesses in there and you're going to need people who are coming, they're going to be coming from all different directions. They could be coming down Crowell Road. They're not going to want to turn right on Main Street and go and turn a left into there. They're going to want to go straight through, turn right at that easement area. Easement B area. That's the easier way to get in. And the other thing to think about is if this is going to be during the busy time during the summer where everybody in Chatham, when you going from June all the way through Labor Day weekend, and you're not looking to make a left-hand turns, you're making to do right turns in order to get around town in here. And so therefore, having that as a relief mechanism to get back to the signal is going to be something of consideration. So I wouldn't jump to the conclusion as a board that this actually should be eliminated until we get more information associated with this. I think that this is something that we're going to want to consider, not just in the West Chatham Neighborhood Center, but also when we get to this center here, this neighborhood center, when we do the rezoning here and other neighborhood centers, this linked properties and linked parking areas are going to be very important to relieve traffic on the main roads. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Arthur. This is Catherine. I just wanted to make a few comments, and then I was just going to summarize what I'm hearing the board saying. About the issue with the easement, I'm hearing that some board members are in favor of eliminating the easement, and some board members, several board members, are not in favor of it. I would tend to agree with Arthur and Warren that there's a reason that we have the linked properties as a principle that we're using in our neighborhood centers rezoning. And I think rather than simply eliminating the easement, I think we need to carefully evaluate whether that linked will be advantageous to both properties. In general, it is advantageous. That's why I'm suggesting that that as a design, that you carefully evaluate the use and the vehicular traffic flow and the pedestrian traffic flow, and the number of parking spaces that will be needed. Just really carefully evaluate that, and also to include outside dining if that's the case. Include an area for pickup of takeout food, and also be sure to include where the food delivery trucks are going to be delivering food. So all of that traffic flow just carefully evaluated in the design and come up with a very clear and detailed explanation of why the design that you're choosing would work. I would tend to, like I'm saying, do consider the lane in front of the building as potentially requiring two-way traffic. So you need to allow enough space there. You need to allow for safe and comfortable pedestrian access from anywhere on the parking lot into the restaurant, or to pick up takeout food, however you arrange that. And I do think there may be advantages to leaving the easement in place. It is something we want to do in our neighborhood centers. However, I could see that eliminating the eastern access to Route 28 might be a good idea. That's getting so close to the stoplight there that it's just kind of inherently not as safe to enter the property on that eastern side. And then widening the western entrance might make a lot of sense. I'd like to see, as a number of other board members have pointed out, a lot more detail about what you're planning to do for the green space and the landscaping and exactly where it is. And so those are the main issues, is the vehicular and pedestrian routes that are being followed on the property. I'd like to see the landscaping, the lighting has been mentioned. Give us more details about the lighting as we usually require, and the signage, location of dumpsters. These are things that that are generally the standard level of details that we require for a formal site plan review. That being said, are any other comments from board members about what we've discussed? Or any other requests that we haven't covered? I think we've been pretty thorough.
David Clark here. I just want to
Yes.
clarify some things. So,
Sure.
when the board is asking,
most recent calls to your station are as displayed.
that's not me. When the board is asking for an analysis of the parking area and traffic flow, that's an on-site. You're looking for a traffic
Yes.
analysis on-site, not a general traffic analysis for the Route 28 intersection.
That's what I was suggesting. Yes.
Okay,
That's what I
because
was
I mean,
suggesting.
obviously, we're having a tremendous reduction in vehicle trips from going from the previous use to this. And then the other question I had was regarding the old Gulf sign at the northwest corner. It was my understanding that we would like to keep that because it's pre-existing non-conforming. It's really the only place on the site for a sign. We're not allowed under mass highway rules to put the sign out in the median. So we can't go there. So I just wanted to speak to that. And then regarding the setbacks, we understand that the current setbacks for this zoning district is 15 feet from the sideline. And obviously we do not meet that in a few spots, but again, this is pre-existing non-conforming. So I don't think any zoning relief is required. And Bill can certainly follow up with Jay on that, but so I don't think there's any requirement on our part to meet that 15-foot setback because the existing parking is closer than that now. That's my only comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from board members? Any other information that you would like to see on the formal site plan application? So David and Bill, do you feel comfortable with what's been discussed?
Yeah, very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. So then I understand our vote would be to accept the pre-application. Yes, Katie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder that the board should decide whether or not to schedule a site visit or to require a public hearing. That's
okay. Thank
Our
you.
application.
Thank you for the reminder, Katie. So let's go through the board members and I'll get your opinions for a site visit. Do we need a site visit and or a public hearing? Let me just get your opinions, and then if we need to take a formal vote, we can do so. Art Spru?
Art Spru, Catherine, I've already performed a site visit on this. I'm familiar with it. I think many of us are. This might be one of those that a public hearing may be warranted on this. If there's not going to be any special permits or conditions with zoning, then we're going to be the only body who's going to be hearing this. So I would say that we might want to consider a formal public hearing on this particular site, especially with its location and all the history here.
Okay, thank you. Warren Chain?
Madam Chairman, no, I'm not trying to make comments.
What is your opinion? Do you feel we need a site visit or a public hearing?
I think the public hearing may be appropriate to get public comment.
Okay, thank you. And Tom Gagan?
Tom Gagan, no, yes.
Okay, Bob Wirtschafter? You may be muted,
Yeah,
Bob.
I was. No, yes, but I guess that would be when they file their formal site plan, right? We're not doing this based
No.
on what we just saw here. Yeah, okay, no, yes.
It would be for the formal. And Bob Dubus?
Bob Lewis, I'm here a little slow sometimes. I think we probably should have a public hearing.
Okay, and Roger Griffin?
Yeah, I think in this situation, I think a public meeting is appropriate.
All right, we seem to be all in agreement, but let's do a formal vote. So we'll do the vote. We have to vote to accept the pre-application, and then we also have to do a vote. I think all of us are feeling a site visit is unnecessary. We're very familiar with the site, but I think everyone does want a public hearing. So first, let's do a vote to accept the pre-application, and then we'll do a vote about the public hearing. So do I have a motion to accept this pre-application?
Bob Dubus moves to accept this as a pre-application.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I'll second that, Roger Griffin.
Great. Let's do our roll call vote. Art Spru?
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain?
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan?
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter?
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus?
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin?
Roger Griffin, approve.
And this is Catherine. I also approve this pre-application. Do I have a motion that we want to agree to hold a public hearing for the formal site plan application?
Art Spru, I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second to that
Bob
motion?
Dubus will second it.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Art Spru?
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain?
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan?
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter?
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus?
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin?
Roger Griffin, approve.
And this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we should hold a public hearing for the formal site plan application for 859 Main Street. Great. I think we're done and we can move on to the next item on our agenda. Thank you, Mr. Riley and Mr. Clark. So the next item on our agenda is 30 Post Office Lane. And again, this is a site plan pre-application. And this is for a proposed change of use from storage space to a landscape company and retail sales. So do I have a presenter for matter?
Yes, David Clark again on behalf of North Chatham Landscaping. So North Chatham Landscaping currently works out of a property in North Chatham and does not have a business presence in one either in the industrial zone or the GB district. So they're looking to move a portion of their operation to this site. So as a landscaping company, they have pickup trucks and small dump trucks and small equipment. And so what we're showing is a storage area on the north side of the building for that. Also, they're thinking about creating a small garden center where they'll be selling potted plants and shrubs and whatnot in the exterior of the building. And so because the public would be coming to the property, we're showing a restoration of the parking area back to where it was back in the 1980s. So I do have pictures of what this property looked like back when the Pelletier family was running a excavation business out of here, and be happy to share that with you. So I don't know if you can see that. Did that come up on the screen?
It does.
Okay, so that was the original Pelletier garden shop. My estimation was that would have been probably back in the early 60s, or maybe even the 50s. They've owned this, 1963 on the chimney. There we go. So that's what it was originally, and then over the years, this, judging by the cars, is probably in the early 80s. So this is when the construction business was in its full operation. So you see dump trucks and loaders and whatnot, and the property basically looks like that now for the most part. I'm sorry, the buildings look like that for the most part. So over the course of the years, the construction business no longer is in operation, but the Pelletier family still owns it. There is an apartment on the second floor of the structure that we're probably going to keep, and then the first floor on the right side of the building would remain for administrative offices for North Chatham Landscape. The 2-bay garage would be kept for keeping vehicles inside, and also landscape equipment kept inside and maintained in the winter months and whatnot. This is judging by the vehicles. This is probably the 1970s, before the large 2-bay garage was built. Yeah, and that's the same picture you just saw. So I'll give the screen back to you all. If you want to put the site plan back up, or I can put it up if take it back. So that's basically what we're proposing, where we show the 4 parking spaces in front of the building. That there were parking spaces there as late as mid 2000s, because we did the sewer connection plan for the Pelletiers, and that area was still parking area. They've since they stopped the construction business, the property is currently just used the residential portion on the second floor, as well as the 2 garage bays are used for storage. So there's really no commercial activity going on there now, other than storage. And so we're showing an expansion, what is considered an expansion now, of the hardscape. And I believe the site coverage calculations show that we still meet the site coverage requirements. I did notice an error in the parking calculation, that we did not include the residential apartment. So we're still going to have the 11 spaces. It's just that only 9 of them would be dedicated to the business. So open up to questions and comments. And
So, David, this is Catherine. I just wanted to clarify. So the apartment, with the change of use, the apartment will remain
yes,
placed? Oh, okay, great. So the apartment won't be eliminated, just
no,
that storage will be converted to a retail area.
no. Right now, the first floor is I'm not sure what to call it, but it was part of the old construction business, and
Oh.
only the first floor would be converted to office space for the landscape business.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So let's go through and
Madam Chairman, if I could interrupt, I'm sorry, Bill Litchfield.
yes, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you. I apologize. I just wanted to add to what David had said. I'm working with David in North Chatham Landscaping. Just a couple of things. The retail is not yet certain. There would be a greenhouse. Plants would be grown for use in conjunction with North Chatham Landscaping. As David has said, the office will be the North Chatham Landscaping, which is now operating out of a residential zone. The office would be here. Some of the trucks would be stored here as well. But as you know, the purpose of a pre-app is to talk about generally what is proposed in an informal way, what is possible and what is acceptable. So the plans will be fine-tuned, but we wanted to get your general sense, given the history of the property, as to whether this would be appropriate. And of course, one of the things that, from I think the experience that most of us have around town, seeing things where you have anybody who is in the landscaping or greenhouse or horticultural business, things tend to be very attractive, which is an improvement over what is there now. Because if we look at the location on, for instance, George Ryder Road, where Nickerson is, or just down the street from my office, where across the street Sorbello Landscaping has its office, that the best business practice for anyone in the landscaping business is to have a very attractive vegetative screen and things that can be grown and sold. We have very candidly some uncertainty as to exactly the history, the current status of the first floor, but it will become office for North Chatham Landscaping if we go forward. I thank you for allowing me to add those thoughts.
No, that's all right. And just let me be clear. So will you have retail customers coming into that area, or will it just be office and storage for the landscaping business?
At this point, we aren't certain whether there will be retail. If we have retail, that may engender necessarily a change in the parking calculation, the parking configuration.
All right. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying all of that. Art Sprue, do you have requests for the formal site plan or questions?
Just a few questions.
Sure.
The proposed equipment storage, is that an open area? Is that enclosed? Is there a structure on it? I'm trying to understand what that's all about.
That is an open area, so it's not included in the building coverage, although I don't think the zone has a building coverage, but it is included in the site coverage. So it's intended to be gravel.
Okay.
With no roof.
Okay.
Okay. And the other thing is, when you do come forward, when you assess this, you talked about perhaps a greenhouse, plantings that may be up for sale and all that. I think you need to make sure that you designate where all of that is occurring on the plan so that we have a good picture of it. You did mention that you needed to correct the parking table. I would agree with you, because if you have retail space of 810 square feet and 150 square feet per parking space, that's 5.4, so that would require 6 spaces there alone, plus the employees, plus the, the apartment. So I still think you can get all of that on your site. It's just that, you need to make sure that all your calculations coincide with that. Let's see. I'm just looking through my notes in here. Oh, and are you going to have, I know you have some garage doors and all of that in the front there. Is that going to be where you're loading and unloading? So just designate where that would be. And if you're adding hardscape surface area, of course, provide some stormwater management related associated with that. That's all I had, Catherine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arthur. Warren. Warren, you may be muted.
Yes, I was muted, but it was not cooperating with unmuting. But thank you. Just a couple of questions. I appreciate the clarification about the equipment storage to the north. At least when you make a formal site plan presentation, it would be good if you had some consideration to the impact on construction equipment going out and in directly onto Depot Road. It's essentially right across from Fisherman's Supply. It's at the crest of a hill. It's sort of at a bit of a curve on Depot Road. And at least some consideration as to the size of the opening onto the parking area and so on would be, I think, appropriate to include in the presentation. The location of the greenhouse that might be proposed, of course, is, I think, essential. Signage that might be appropriate or proposed, again, would be of interest as to where it would be, even though it has to be approved separately. Some of the standards like location of where the dumpster might be for the business, trash, I should say, in general. But I'm very pleased that they're not going to lose the apartment. And I think it's, a very nice proposal all the way around. No other questions.
Thank you, Warren. Tom Gagan.
Tom Gagan, no further questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Wirtschafter.
Bob Wirtschafter has no more further questions.
Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, I've known this property all my life. I think it's going to be a great addition to what it has been and what it could be.
Thank you. Roger Griffin. Roger, you might be muted.
Roger Griffin, no questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So this, Catherine, I think I would just like to sum up to say, I think we need some clarity as to whether it will actually be retail with retail customers coming into the site, or whether it will be just be office, greenhouse, and equipment storage for the landscaping company, because that's going to make a big difference in how we calculate the parking and how we, look at the pedestrian access and everything like that. So it will make a difference in the site plan. So I think we just need to be clear. Will it be retail or will it be just office? So that was just the one thing I wanted to say. And also thank you for the clarification again regarding the equipment storage on the north. I also was not sure whether that was going to be a structure or just an open area. So that really helps. So we also need to consider as a board whether a site visit is needed and or a public hearing. So if I could just poll the board, and then if we need to take a vote, we can do that. Art Sprue, your opinion on a site visit or a public hearing?
I was out there for a site visit. I think the pictures were very informative, so I don't need a site visit. On this one, we may want to take a pass on a public hearing on it. I'm not sure it's going to be warranted.
All right,
But we'll see what the other board members say.
thank you. Warren Chain,
This is Warren Chain. I say no site visit and no public hearing.
Tom Gagan,
No.
Bob Wertheimer.
No,
You may
no.
be muted.
No,
And
no, no,
Bob-
no.
Okay. Bob Dubus,
No.
Roger.
Roger Griffin, no.
Okay, and this is Catherine. I agree with the rest of the board. I think a site visit is not necessary and a public hearing is not necessary. So what our action would be is we would vote to accept this pre-application. So do I have a motion to that effect?
Art Spru, I'll make a motion to accept this pre-application.
Thank
Bob
you.
Dubus will second it.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approved.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wertheimer,
Bob Wertheimer, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin.
Roger Griffin, approved.
And this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we accept this pre-application. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda, we've already completed 79 Forest Beach Road. That item will be continued to our November 8th meeting. So the next item is a subdivision plan review. This is a continuation of the public hearing that was begun on September 27th. And this is for the subdivision for 776 Main Street and 70 Depot Road. This is a 5-lot subdivision of land. We are in the middle of our public hearing procedure. And as all of you know, there are certain steps to the public hearing procedure. We were at the point of additional planning board comments. And of course, we had not yet voted to close the public hearing and enter formal deliberations because we wanted to do a site visit and also receive additional information from the applicant. I believe the bulk of that was the comments from Tom Temple, which we have received, and Dave Clark has responded to those comments. Before we just continue with any board comments and discussion, I just want to ask Dave Clark if you'd like to go through the new information or if there is anything you want to inform the board of at this time.
No, I think everything was explained either at the onsite or I marked up both the planning board's comment letter and Tom Temple's comment letter. I think the red lines I added to that explains all the changes as well as the changes to the stormwater report.
Okay, great. Great. And Arthur, I'll just ask you to comment because you had prepared the summary of the information that the board needed. And I think Dave also replied to that. And were you satisfied that those questions were answered and those requirements were met?
This is Art Spru. Yes, I want to thank David for being diligent about it. I think he was very responsive to the questions that both Tom Temple and I brought forward. He answered all of them. I think I only have a few other things that I wanted to throw into the mix in here, just as probably clarity.
All right, go ahead.
There is a significant amount of excavation here for Annabelle Lane. David, do you know if this is going to be staged and stockpiled on site and reused, or is it going to be just trucked off?
We're going to keep it all on site. We're just going to get started next week on site plans for 2 of the lots, and most likely we're going to need that material. We envision that at least 3 of the lots, 2, 3, and 4, would probably be walkouts, So we would be bringing the grade up on the street side of those houses in order to achieve that. So we would most likely keep that material on site. Believe it or not, living on a sand pit here on Cape Cod, sand is expensive. So we would like to keep it all on site.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the only reason why I brought that up is if it's going to be transported off, it just needs to be trucked appropriately on public roads and some designated locations and where that's going to be if you were going to do that. The other thing is if you are going to stockpile it on site, then I think it's important that you identify the locations on your soil erosion control plan so that you can make sure that you're doing the appropriate amount of erosion control for those, because those stockpile areas may stay there for a period of time before any activity occurs on the lots. So just add that to that plan. The other thing that you did clarify, which was the detention area in Annabelle Lane cul-de-sac. You did provide information associated with that. You indicated that the elevation at the high point would be 45 to detain all of that, and that all makes sense. So I think what we need to do is just provide a condition, Catherine, that
Yes.
driveways will provide an apron edge of travelway to the property line, or at least 6 feet, and pitch to the road with the minimum high point of the apron to be at elevation 45.0. That's what David has shown on his plans, and I just want to make sure that all the driveway aprons have the same thing, that they are at least elevation 45, and then we know that the stormwater that's in Annabelle Lane is going to stay in Annabelle Lane. That's the most important thing that I was interested in identifying. Other than that, I think he's covered all the bases of what we're talking about. We probably want to make sure we're adding clarity to what David has suggested associated with the infiltrating structures that are going to be on each of the lots, individual lots, and those would need to be fined and reviewed at some point to confirm that they are actually, based on the revised road property grades, that they are capturing the runoff and it's not going off site. The only other thing I had was the covenant, and I'd like to perhaps revisit that afterwards. The covenant that I read in the stormwater guidelines, I mean, the subdivision control guidelines was much more extensive and had some clauses in there that I think are important that should be included in the covenant, and I certainly can highlight a couple of those to be included in that, and unless others have some other reason to change other things inside the covenant. But that's all I have.
Okay, so you want to add, so are you adding 2 conditions to the conditions proposed by staff? Or just
well, yes, since the erosion, since the soil, there's significant amount of soil that's going to be excavated because of Annabelle Lane. So it's going to be stockpiled on site. That's fine. I think it just needs to be protected to make sure it's not running off. That's all. And so that needs to be located on the plan, soil erosion control plan. It needs to be noted on how the erosion control measures are going to protect runoff from occurring associated with those stockpile areas.
Okay.
That's one, and the other one would be the driveway apron with a high point of 45.
Okay, so that driveway apron. Okay. All right, very good. And then the covenant, I think we can look at later, as I understand. Yes.
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay. So, but you would add 2 conditions. All right. Good. Warren Chain, more comments, discussion on this?
Just one minor point of clarification. I'm assuming that given that this will remain as commercially zoned, but with the change of use, I'm assuming that the setbacks would be those appropriate for the general business zone and not residential for the houses that are to be built, just to confirm that.
That's what I would understand, but the applicant will be seeking special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals to have residential use for this subdivision in a GB2 zone. So I think in that special permitting process, that's where the setbacks will be defined. And I'm going to ask for Katie's comments on what I've just said. If Katie's there.
Yes, Madam Chair, yes, I believe the GB2, or yes, the GB2 setbacks would still be enforced with a residential structure. That's
Again, that
fine.
was my assumption. I just wanted to clarify. No other comment.
Okay, great. Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, no comments.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at the stormwater report. I just want some clarification. The Massachusetts stormwater policy, when was the last time the requirements were adjusted? Dave?
I think it's been over a decade, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is these storm 25-year, 100-year storms are based on climate that we no longer have.
Well, that's an interesting subject. That has been brought up to the state several times. And right now, the state requires us to use Technical Bulletin 40 or Technical Paper 40, which specifies the 25, 50, and 100-year storm. Interestingly enough, this came up in a subdivision in Harwich last year, and the latest climate information from the Northeast Climate Center, I think it is Cornell or Syracuse, I can't remember, one of the two. For Chatham. Cornell, yes, thank you. For Chatham, the 100-year storm is actually slightly less under the Cornell numbers. So we are conservative on our rainfall amounts. Everybody was shocked by that, and but Chatham, for some reason, Technical Paper 40 being 70 years old now, I think, is still more conservative than the Climate Center.
Okay, thanks. Because I recently was involved in the same kinds of calculations for weather, and there was clearly a significant change in weather over the last 10 years. So
absolutely, yeah. And I actually looked at it for other communities down the other end of the Cape, and it's significantly different. The Cornell numbers are more stringent than the Technical Paper 40. But for some reason, Chatham, Harwich, Orleans, Technical Paper, the Technical Paper 40 is more restrictive.
Okay, thanks for that. Appreciate it. That's all I have, Catherine.
okay, thank you. Bob Dubus.
Bob Davis, I have no real questions. The subdivision plan looks like any other plan we look at.
Okay. Roger Griffin.
No, Roger Griffin, I have no questions.
All right. So I'll ask if there's any other new information that we need to consider regarding this matter before we vote to close the public hearing and enter formal deliberations. I believe we have no further correspondence or anything like that.
Madam Chairman, that's what I was gonna ask. Are we gonna read anything from the highway surveyor or any other papers that we had come in?
Do you mean from Tom Temple?
Yes.
We can read that if you like.
No, it doesn't matter to me. I read it, but so I just wondered if you were going to read it out loud.
I can read it out loud. It's rather lengthy, but I can go ahead and do that. So these were the comments from Tom Temple, our DPW director. And he says he's reviewed the aforementioned subdivision, Annabelle Lane, and he offers the following comments and recommendations. While the majority of the items listed may not typically be seen by planning board during your initial review, these items will ultimately need to be addressed during site plan review and or special permit application or construction as applicable. Cover sheet plan, provide record owner's name and address, deed references, book and page number or land court certificate number. Dave Clark responds that this is not required. Information is provided on sheets 1 and 2. And I do want to mention that Tom Temple has verbally confirmed with us that he's in agreement with Dave Clark's responses to his notes. Point 2, registered professional stamps and signatures in designated location and title box. Those have been added. Provide scale of drawing, that's been added. Provide north arrow, that's been added. Land court division plan, sheet 1 of 8. Land court plan missing Donald Poole signature, and that has been added. Division plan, sheet 2 of 8. Tom Temple mentions he did not see any waiver requests listed on the land plan. However, if this is an oversight, please provide a table with a list of waivers being requested. The reply is no waivers are being requested. Point 2, while all necessary bearings and distances for all easement areas, for example, drainage and utility easements, are shown on the plan, Tom recommends if the planning board is looking to change any of its regulations, that all easements have monumentation set depicting limits of said easements. Topography plan, sheet 3 of 8, show all existing contours located within the existing state right-of-way layout of Route 28. I won't read the whole paragraph, but this has been added. Point 2, add a proposed grading sheet depicting proposed contours, house locations, driveway locations, utilities serving each lot. And obviously, since we do not have site plans, this cannot be done at this point. Road plan and profile plan, sheet 4 of 8. Show proposed street sign location on plan Annabelle Lane. That's been added. Point 2, handicap ramps with warning delineators will need to be installed as part of this subdivision. These have been added. See detail 1, sheet 4, detail 3, sheet 6. Point 3, provide tree planting detail chart depicting size, type of trees, etc., and approval by the Department of DPW for roadside trees. This was provided. Point 4, show existing gas main on Depot Road, and that's been added. Please label the radius of the turnaround area added. Point 6, please provide a note on the plan. The developer contractor is responsible for paying for the necessary inspection of the utilities, as well as providing a minimum of 2 weeks notification to the Department of Public Works for scheduling same, and this is already provided. See sheet 7. Point 7, from Tom Temple, given the 5% grade heading to the cul-de-sac, planning board may want to entertain the use of either vertical granite curbing or type 3 hot mix asphalt curbing. Please note the details shown on sheet 6 of 8 would have to be revised. Paving detail and cross section on this sheet. Dave Clark's response was, this is not advisable. 5% is a relatively shallow grade. Vertical curbing would urbanize the look of the subdivision. Then Depot Road and Driveway Profile Plan, Sheet 5 of 8, Tom Temple, Point 1, as mentioned above, given the 5% grade, heading to the cul-de-sac, Planning Board may want to entertain vertical granite curbing or type 3 hot mix asphalt curbing. Again, Dave's response is not advisable. It would urbanize the look of the subdivision. Under drainage and paving details plan sheet 6 through 8, please change temporary trench detail paving thickness to 3-inch minimum. This was revised. See detail 4 on sheet 8. Erosion control details plan, sheet 8 through 8. Dave responds, erosion control plan provided. Tom Temple asked for an erosion control plan should be developed for the building of the roadway and infrastructure. Hay bales or hay bale silt fence combination, and this was added. Anti-tracking area at all construction entrances, this was added. Protect existing and proposed drainage structures with hay bales and or silt sacks. Dave Clark's response was not applicable. No drainage structures exist on site or within 200 feet of the construction entrance. Next point, include the following notes. All erosion control measures shall be in place prior to construction. Erosion control shall conform to the Town of Chatham Conservation Commission requirements as stated in the order of conditions. Dave Clark's response was this is not applicable. Delineate all stockpile areas, not applicable. Provide safety fencing around stockpiles over 10 feet in height or otherwise restrict site access. And that Dave Clark's response was not applicable. And Bob, I'm going to ask you, did you have comments or questions or discussion on any of those points from Tom Temple?
No, I think they're adequate. I'm very
Okay.
interesting.
Okay. And Dave Clark's responses, you're all right with all of those?
Yeah, they did a great job on it.
Okay, great. All right. So I'll just ask again if there's any other discussion or comments from the board or the public or the applicant or any other new information that we need to admit before we vote to close the public hearing and enter formal deliberations.
Madam Chairman, this is Warren Chain. Just one quick question. Has the CBA hearing date yet been set for this?
So I'll ask the applicant and Katie if a date has been set.
David Clark here. No, we're not even ready to file with zoning board in that we're just getting going on the first site plan for a house. Zoning Board of Appeals approval of the subdivision itself is not required.
Right. So the Zoning Board of Appeals would be approving the residential use in the GB2 zone, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so you can't do that until you have site plans for the houses. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Warren?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Great. So do I have a motion to close the public hearing and enter formal deliberations?
Did we get confirmation there's no more public to speak?
I did ask 2 or 3 times. I'll ask once more. Any other comments from the public or from the applicant or any other new information?
Madam Chair, I don't see any hands raised to speak at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. So,
Madam Chairman, Bob Dubus, I move to close the public hearing.
may I have a second to that motion?
Roger Griffin, I'll second that motion.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Approve, Tom Gagan.
Bob Wertschafter,
Bob Ward chapter approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we close the public hearing and the board will now enter formal deliberations and there can be no further participation of the public at this time. So what we have before us is a subdivision plan that does meet the requirements of our subdivision rules and regulations and of the GB2 zoning district. Staff has recommended conditions that would go along with our approval of this subdivision plan. I can quickly summarize those. Arthur Sprue has also proposed adding two conditions. So I will quickly summarize the conditions that recommended by staff. Some of them are standard, so I may summarize and be brief. Point one, the physical features and data shown on the definitive subdivision plan represent the approved division of land and installation of infrastructure improvements. Any deviation from the approved layout constitutes a violation of planning board approval unless it is reviewed and approved by the planning board. Then we have a list of the sheets. One is plan of land, two is division plan, 776 Main Street and 70 Depot Road. 3 is topography plan dated October 13th, 2021. 4 is Annabelle Lane plan view prepared for Chatham Productions dated October 13th, 2021. 5 is Annabelle Lane road profile and sections dated October 13th. 6 is Depot Road profile driveway plan and profile to company division plan, again dated October 13th, 2021. 7, drainage and paving details, dated July 1st, 2021. 8 is water and sewer details, dated October 13th. 9 is demolition and erosion control, dated October 13th, 2021. 10 is erosion control details to accompany division plan, and that's also dated October 13th, 2021. Condition 2, certification by licensed professional that the construction of ways and installation of public improvements is completed in compliance with the approved definitive subdivision plan, and the submittal of an as-built plan to the Community Development Department is required prior to the issuance of a certificate of use and occupancy by the building commissioner for the last dwelling constructed in the subdivision. The property owner is responsible for coordinating all inspections and payments with DPW with adequate notice provided. Condition 3, lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 shall be subject to the terms of a covenant until such time as the infrastructure improvements are constructed and certified, or a performance bond is provided to be held by the treasurer of the town of Chatham. Condition 4, the subdivider shall coordinate the provisions of municipal water with the Chatham DPW director. Condition 5, utilities must be placed underground. Condition 6, all stormwater shall be managed on site and in a manner that does not contribute to ponding, flooding, and or erosion. Condition 7, any future dwellings on lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 shall have downspouts and gutters connected to dry wells. Point 8, there shall be a minimum of 3 6x6 leaching basins per lot on lots 2 to 6. Point 9, condition 9, all easements shown on the definitive subdivision plan shall be recorded at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds and copies provided to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of any building permits. Condition 10, upon completion of the construction of the proposed 33-foot roadway, a 2-year maintenance agreement shall be executed and a maintenance bond of not less than $1,000 shall be provided to the town. And Arthur Sprue has proposed adding 2 conditions. And Arthur, actually, you spoke rather quickly. I wasn't able to get them completely. So could you summarize the 2 conditions that you would like to add?
Certainly. This is Art Sprue. Excavation of soils and stockpile on site is to be noted on the erosion control plan with appropriate erosion control measures. And the last one would be driveway aprons from provide apron edge of the travelway to the property line, or at least 6 feet, and pitch to the road with a minimum high point of the apron to be at elevation 45.0.
Okay,
And
thank-
one correction, I
Yeah.
noted is on number 8. I believe the lots are 2 through 5, not 2 through 6.
All right, so let's amend that.
And I'll make an motion to approve those, the subdivision with those conditions.
All right, and we now have 12 conditions. And condition number 8 with the amendment to lots 2 through 5. So there's a motion on the floor to approve the subdivision plan for 776 and 776 Main Street and 70 Depot Road as presented with the 12 conditions as just reviewed and amended. Do I have a second to that motion?
Bob Dubus will second it.
All right, we'll do our roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, abstain.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, abstain.
Bob Wertschafter,
Approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. So we have 2 abstentions and 5 approve. Is that correct? So we do have more than the majority vote. So the subdivision plan will is approved with conditions as stated.
Thank you very much. So we'll probably be back before you sometime in, let's see. When's your last meeting in November?
The last meeting in November, I think, is it the 27th? Katie, I'll ask Katie to confirm that date. I'm sorry,
November 22nd is our
22nd,
last
yes.
scheduled meeting, yes.
Okay. Yes, so I guess we could shoot for that date for endorsement. I think that'll be 20 days. Well, actually, it's 20 days from when town clerk gets the letter, right? Anyways, in the meantime, if we could get a draft of the covenant, that way my client's attorney can take a look at it, and we can, and if it's if everybody's happy with it, we can have that endorsed and be ready for the meeting when you endorse the plan.
I think that should be possible. I'll just check with Katie that that can work.
Yes, Madam Chair, I don't see that as a problem.
Okay,
I'll work with Art Spru. He had some additional conditions, and we
Okay.
can work together, and I can submit that to the applicant.
all right.
Thank you.
And any other points from your side, Katie, that we need to consider
No, I
before
think
we
that's
move
it.
on?
Endorsement of the plan and endorsement of the covenant.
All right, great. All right, so we'll move on to our next agenda item then. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
And the public hearing is, we have now concluded the public hearing. So the next item on our agenda is a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a proposed driveway in the Conservancy District, and this is at 43 Dune Drive. And do I have a presenter for this matter?
David Clark again.
All right.
I think Rob Calderaro might be on the line. If not, that's
I
all right.
am as well, David.
Okay, thank you, Rob. So this is pretty straightforward. The applicants are proposing to redo their driveway. It is 38 square feet larger than what's there now. We're before conservation now, and we were notified that that small change requires zoning board of appeals approval. One thing the board should know, since the current owners have owned the property, they have taken steps to make the overall property better for the environment. What's shown as Shell Driveway now was paved up until 2018. So they voluntarily removed how much square feet, 1,700 square feet of asphalt already and converted it to shell. So we think the 38 square feet of additional shell really has no impact compared to what was there just 3 years ago.
David, I might add as well that of that 37 square feet, this is Rob Calderero with Bohema Serri de Silva. Of that 37 square feet additional is more than half of that is removal of an existing brick walkway as well. So the actual increased number is even smaller than that.
Okay. And also I'll ask the board to note the colored plan with the 3 colors that show the existing driveway, the proposed portion of the driveway to be removed, and the proposed portion of the driveway to be added. Just makes the situation extremely clear what's being done. It's a relatively small change. Are there any comments or questions from any members of the board for David or the applicant? There being none, I would ask for a motion that we send a positive recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding the construction of this driveway in the Conservancy District, and that we use the language that we normally use, that the driveway be constructed of pervious material and be constructed in such a way that allows for the unobstructed flow of water. That's the standard language that we use. May I have a motion that we send a positive recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals?
This is Warren Chain. I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Bob Dubus, second.
So let's do our roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, abstain.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we send a positive recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Wirtschafter, did you want to make any comments?
I'm just generally not in favor of adding any additional driveways to any of the conservation areas, and I'm letting this one go through without objecting, but I'm not going to be approving it.
All right. All right. Good for us to know. Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is we have the issue of the planning board representative to the Chatham Preservation Commission, and Art Spru has been our representative. There seemed to be, an oversight that it wasn't recorded back in July. We need to reappoint Art Spru and take a formal vote. He is willing to continue to serve as the planning board's representative to the Chatham Preservation Commission. Arthur, did you want to make any comments regarding that?
No, it's been very informative to be involved with this, so I certainly am open for it through one more season.
All right, good. So any other comments or discussion from other board members? Arthur's willing to continue to serve, and it seemed to be kind of somewhat of an oversight that we didn't take a formal vote and record it when we should have, which was, I believe, in July. Any other comments or discussion?
Bob Dubus here. He would like to make a motion to have Arthur continue as the preservation representative. Thank you.
All right, and we do have a motion on the floor, but I see Katie Donovan's hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Sprue is aware and the rest of the board that the appointment would be through June of 2023, just an FYI. So just wanted to make that clear.
Oh, wait a minute. All right, that's good. I'm good.
Are you, that's all right, Arthur?
Yes, I was just joking.
Okay, great. All right. We have a motion on the floor from Bob Dubus. Do I have a second to that motion?
Warren Chain, I second.
All right, let's do our roll call vote. Warren Chain,
Approve, Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. And Arthur, would you like to vote for yourself? You may. If you
I'll approve that. I'm good.
Good. All right. So Arthur will continue as the planning board's representative to the Chatham Preservation Mission. Now, there were just a few points to bring up. I just wanted to mention to the board, as was discussed at recent meetings, Katie Donovan has set up meetings to bring our proposed draft zoning for the West Chatham Neighborhood Center to other boards and committees, as is the plan. It was presented by the Cape Cod Commission to HBDC. Arthur and I also attended those meetings. In general, I thought the response was extremely positive regarding the proposed draft zoning for West Chatham Neighborhood Center from HBDC. Also, just to note that this Thursday, October 28th at 3 o'clock, Katie Donovan and Cape Cod Commission will present the draft to Zoning Board of Appeals, and there'll be a follow-up meeting with them on November 4th at 4 o'clock. I think I will try to attend. Arthur will try to attend. If any board members would like to attend, you're perfectly very welcome to do so. So we wanted to mention that. Probably the next step after that would be to meet again with the Cape Cod Commission from our side and look at their integration of the comments from the two boards, HBDC and ZBA. And then after that, bring it to the public and start to have public forums where the draft would be brought before the public. So I just wanted to mention that to everyone and also mention a possible schedule that we're considering. And we do again want to meet with the Airport Commission and the FAA consultant, Matt Karen, and the town council to again review the airport issues and vet all the questions that board members have. And we're thinking of bringing that meeting to November 22nd and then scheduling a special meeting on November 29th with Cape Cod Commission to review their revised draft of the West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning, which would integrate any comments or feedback that we get from HBDC and ZBA, and then potentially December 13th might be the next time that we would meet again with Cape Cod Commission and bring the proposed draft in a first meeting before the public. So that's a potential schedule. And I just wanted to mention that to the board. Also, just in regards to the West Chatham Neighborhood Center, there was a question that came up regarding the aquifer. And I think we have an answer from Mr. Temple about that. And I'm actually going to ask Katie to review that answer with the board.
Sure, Madam Chair, thank you. So Mr. Gagan, and I believe it was Mr. Wirtschafter, had a question regarding the use of wells for irrigation systems and whether or not that would be allowed. And I reached out to Tom Temple. He let me know that there's actually, per Article 6, Section 2 of the Water Department Rules and Regulations, no new irrigation systems shall be connected to municipal water supply as of January 1st, 2021. So as such, any new irrigation systems would require a well. And I also asked Tom whether or not the any private wells would have a negative effect on the aquifer, and he said that they would not. So I just wanted, Mr. Gigan asked me to let everybody know that those answers to the questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And also, we're reminded that we've made a commitment to review the ADU bylaw. Ally and I, when Ally was, before she left for leave, we discussed that. And I think, and also I think we brought it back to the board that because of COVID restrictions, we wanted to give it a little more time. But now the COVID restrictions again are getting lifted. We'll see how things go. We're also anticipating that Ally will be back fairly soon after her maternity leave. So what we're thinking is to schedule that sometime after Ally returns. So I just wanted to mention that to the board. And again, I just wanted to remind everyone about the open meeting law training that we had at the end of September. I know a lot of you attended, and I've heard feedback from some of you that you found it very, very helpful and useful to get the training about the Massachusetts open meeting law. I just wanted to remind everyone who wasn't able to attend that there is a recording available, and we certainly would encourage you to review the recording of that session. It was very informative. And again, just a note to the board about the purpose and intention of the Massachusetts open meeting law. It's a very important one for our functioning, for our proper functioning as a regulatory board and as a legislative board for the town of Chatham. The purpose is really all about transparency and accountability. And the purpose is really, that's why I would say that best practices as a board is that all information regarding any matter that we consider it together as a board in open meeting when we're being recorded and we're on TV and the public has access. Certainly everyone is welcome, to gather information as you need to about any matter, but it's very important to bring it to the public and to the board and to the open meetings, and that all information is vetted publicly, and that really helps the process, and that's the intention of the Massachusetts open meeting law. So I just wanted to mention that. Any other comments from anyone who attended those sessions? Any questions or anything you'd like to mention about those training sessions? And yes, Katie.
I apologize, Madam Chair. That was a little too quick. I actually have one more comment on one other item when you're done with this one.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if there's no comments or questions from the board about the Massachusetts open meeting law training and our implementation of it, Katie, please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to remind the board members that Michelle had sent out an email regarding the upcoming sessions for the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative. And if any of the board members would like to take any of those trainings, we do have a budget for training. So please let me know. We can either sign you up through, we can actually do this application for you, or you can sign up and then you could submit for reimbursement. So I just wanted to remind the board members of that. And I think that one of the greatest courses I've heard for new and just and existing members of the boards is the roles and responsibilities of planning boards and zoning boards of appeals. So if board members haven't taken that course, I think that is a very beneficial course to take. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But again, you're welcome to look at the entire course listing and let me know if you'd like to take one or more. That would be great.
Great.
That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Thanks for that reminder. They do look like they're excellent courses. Do you remember offhand the dates of the one on the roles and responsibilities? It'll be in the
yeah. It will be in the email. I'm not sure, but they are all virtual this year.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So then before we adjourn, can I ask if there's any other comments from any board members or members of the public? Yes, Warren Chain.
Would it be possible to have an email sent out to the planning board with your timeline and the dates for the meetings that you mentioned with respect to the draft West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning?
Yeah, I'm sure we can do that. This is all tentative. It's, I think it's not completely set up, but I'm sure Katie, once it's more solid, we could just remind board members of those dates. Would that be all right?
So, certainly. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, so as long as there's no other comments from the board or the public, I'll ask for a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Bob Dubus, move to adjourn.
All right, may I have a second to that
Hey,
motion?
I see those smiles.
I have a second to that motion? Warren Chain, is that a
I
second?
second.
All right, so Arts Brew,
Arts Brew approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain approve.
Tom Gagan. Tom Gagan, you may be muted. Or maybe he's left. Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approved.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we adjourn. And let's note the time at 8:07 p.m. And thank you everyone for
Thank you,
your
everyone.
participation. Thank you.